Okay, I see some of you guys have done the test. Hi, everyone. Sorry, that's how I start. But it looks really good, so I'm really excited about that. So everybody else who hasn't done it yet, just take that and run with it and know you're going to be doing fine if you focus and concentrate and have your test review in front of it. I see you've done it, Vinny. Was the test review helpful?
Yes, it was. Sorry, I have my camera off because I'm having my breakfast.
That's all right. I got my coffee still.
No, I'm
I
actually feeding
spent
my
I spent
face.
9 hours in the ER yesterday because I had an ingrown hair that got infected. So
Ah,
yeah, don't I don't know what to tell you, but that was weird. So the review was helpful, and so if you haven't done the test, make sure you have that, right? Because I know Vinny has done it, and she looks really really good the way she's done it. All right. Any questions? Please bring those on, even though we're going to move forward in the material. If during this course of talking here, you have something about the test, just bring it up. It's open till I think tomorrow. Just keep at it. So you're doing great. With that, I can basically go into what's coming up now. So this is now the place where we turn from sort of the small stuff that we can't really see with the naked eye into the muscles, into the bones that we can touch and feel and palpate. This is also, so we're starting that. We're starting with the bones and the muscles. This week, we do the skull. And then I put the facial muscles right with the skull because that sort of goes together. That's sort of a little bit. Can everybody hear me?
yes,
Except, can you guys hear me all right, Vinny?
I
Yeah, we
can
can
hear
hear you.
Okay, Fabiola, I don't know. Maybe call in, or if it doesn't help or change, call my phone and we'll figure out how to get you at least on the audio or something like that. All right, just keep bugging us if it doesn't work for you. Where was I? Oh, the skull and then the muscles of the face we put together too in his first week. And then afterwards, we're moving to the rest of the skeleton. And then we're bringing the muscles together that are attached to the bones and move the bones and around or hold the bones. That's the other thing. That's the postural muscle. They hold us up against gravity that we don't fall down. I think personally, of course, I'm a muscle bone guy. So that's what I spend my life with doing because early on I felt like I had a little issues in my muscles and my bones, and I felt like I needed to get as much help as I can. That's actually how I came to America originally, because it just felt like I got a little more variety over here than in Switzerland. And it worked, but of course I also made a profession out of it for myself, which is why I'm so always sort of pushing on people to really think about what they're doing from an interest perspective or from a also a perspective for good at. So those are sort of always the two main things that I try that are besides the money part that always comes in, of course, as well. That it's good to have a profession that makes a decent income. All right. Having said that, um, 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 make sure you reach out to me as much as you want, especially in this section. This is like my meat and potato. Even if you have things with low back or whatever, I don't have to. I'm here for information on all fronts in that respect. But this is also the time where we then go a little bit into the personal space and we go into in-person lab. They're optional. I do not want to make them obligatory, mandatory, because we still have COVID. The numbers are going back up. I want people to be able to do this class even if they don't feel comfortable with coming into the classroom. I'm probably going to have my mask on, even if I'm speaking. That's how I am. I see 90-year-old patients. I have to be careful about these kind of things. But we don't start that today. We're going to start that next Monday evening. I do also have videos of the material that I'm presenting in that period. But this is time where we have kinesthetic time and we touch the models, the bones. We could talk about them in the first few when we go to the muscle and the bones. I don't really give you extra credit because it's really kind of great to actually just feel that if you have the ability. So I don't want to punish you if you take this class and you can't come Monday nights because some other circumstances. And so it's not fully necessary, except if your transfer thing requires the class to have an in-person section. You have to check that with whatever you're going to go with. So make sure you're aware of that, or talk to your counselor. But something like that. And it's really strange because the rules are shifty, they're fluid, they're depending on who you ask. So I'm not. That's one reason why I did it. And so I might kind of relaxed about that part. When we finish the muscle and bones, then we get into the heart first. And then at some point we do heart, we do skin, we do endocrine, we do immune system a little bit, and then we get into the brain. And then later on we get into a kidney as well. So we have a few things we dissect. So we have organs, we have heart organ, we have a brain, we can dissect. They're all sheep. Or cow for the eyeball. We do an eyeball dissection. That's a really interesting one. And screw and all that. And then we do a kidney. And those are sort of tissues to feel. They're good. It's good to feel the things also, not just intellectually talk about them and have them on the iPad or in paper. And so if you have the ability to we do those as we go along in those chapters. We just come together and do some dissections on those organs. Again, not mandatory, it's optional. It's enhancing, sort of, to speak. On those, I give you extra credit. You don't really need those if you're doing okay in class, but if you feel like you need those, then that's a good place to get them. That's one place to get some extra credit points. I also have a few surveys at the end that give you a little bit of goodies on that front. If that is necessary, I hope not, and I think it shouldn't be. Or if it is, you should talk to me now if you're feeling like, oof, what's going on here? Because the class is sort of designed that it's really me coaching you kind of through the process class. This is also now the section where we're going to have some interesting integrations. Let me start showing you. Any questions so far? You guys good? Oh, there's a raised hand. Talk to me. Who's talking?
Yeah, it's me. Hi, Professor. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. So what time is on Monday, the lab?
Oh, good. At 6 o'clock. We do 6 to 8 at Merritt.
At Merritt, okay. And then you'll provide us with more information later this week.
I can tell you, it's in the S building.
Okay.
And it's in S210.
S210.
And then that's when if you know the S building, you come from behind. That's that level. It's the lowest sort of classroom level floor.
Okay.
What the cadaver lab is and all that sort of stuff. But as we get closer, I'll start sending texts out this week with a little map, a picture on it, and so that stuff working for you guys. Communicating with text, is that all right?
Really
good. Generally, people like that. It's like we don't have to make it more. I always say my grandma didn't have email, so I'm not going to eat the email. She also didn't have text, but text is sort of like talking a little bit. It's kind of much easier for most of us, I think, at this point.
Yeah, it's super convenient. Thank you.
You too, right? Yeah. So we keep it that if some of you have an email thing, also try to put everything that I'm putting up that's sort of announcey type in announcements and in emails. But text me if you need to talk to me over email. And I do try to check the Canvas email as well every day. It's just not every hour. The phone is with me. The force shall be with me. Good. So let's go through this week, because this week is this is a crazy cool section. Not crazy, cool. What am I talking about? Don't need to scare you guys. Oh, Safari, where are you? Oh, here. Good. Let's see if we can visualize this. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Good. Yeah, it's perfect. If you have a little bit of dialogue, I prefer that. I know it's weird on Zoom, but we make it work. All right, this is with the pink around. This is how you guys see it. All right. So when we get through the module, so we've done the first stuff here. We've done this already. Yeah. So now we get into the things we can see. So the first week is going to be and I open all of them last night. Sorry, it took me a while. Yesterday, of course, I was at the darn ER, so I couldn't do anything. Actually, I graded a lot while I was there, but only on the phone. Anyway, this is the next section. Look at that. We start with the skull, we go to the joints, and then the skeleton, and then we get into the muscle function and the trunk muscle. That trunk is sort of, they call that the axial skeleton, because they always think like you turn it upside down, it's like the axis of a car. So, it's the core part. When we talk about medicine, we talk about the core, sports medicine, or exercise physio and that kind of stuff. And then we, from there, we go into the upper extremity, the lower extremities. So I'm kind of trying to front load it a little bit more heavy. That's why the skeleton comes in 1 week. And then the muscles, some of those muscles are easy peasy to understand for a lot of you guys. Some of them get a little bit more difficult, like the forearm muscles, but we have like mnemonics and ways to remember them that I picked up along the way in Cairo school and all that I try to present it to you in a way that is hopefully meaningful from a functions perspective. What are those muscles doing and what are they important for? But also from a perspective then of being able to commit it to some sort of memory easier, or at least in my class, understanding. But if you take anatomy further, you're going to have to put that stuff into your brain that it comes out without looking on a list. And so that's sort of hopefully the process. We can help you with that. And we finish up with the legs. The forearm are really the ones that people get a little most confused. The legs then are a little bit more straightforward, although they mimic each other a lot, which is kind of cool. And then we finish up with test 2 at the end at some point. Look at that, October 22nd. So don't worry about that yet. It's a while down the road, but I just want to talk about it from the start, because this is now about terminology. And so this test is going to be a eye point. I have these models here. Look at that. This is a test review. So in this test review, you have all these things here, these tabs, and look, I put some study sessions up. These are actually in class. I got to put all of them up. These are actually when we get. These are in class. These are actually, I just put those up last semester, so I don't know if they're helpful yet, but check those out as you go through. But the way that the test is structured, I have a tab here that is just model pictures, because as the pandemic came, I took pictures of models, and I put tags on them and say, what's this called and what's that called? And as we were in the classroom, I did it in the model itself. But now you're going to have a little label here and says, number 1, what's this called? And you have to look on a list and then type in, what is that called? And I use 3 things. I use bones themselves, like the whole bone, and then I'll use landmarks, which are parts of the bone, and then I use muscles. The muscles are coming up. Well, actually, no, we do have muscles, facial muscles this week. So let me, how do I get out of this? Jeez. Let me get out of this if I can find my exit strategy here. Oh, close. I didn't see it. And then let me show you this other thing here, which is the anatomy term list. And this you should print out, I think, if you can, because if it shows. Did I make a mistake here? Oh, gosh. Oh, there it comes. It's just a little slow. This list is all the muscles and all the bony things that I want you to know for test 2. Looks like a lot, is not as much as it looks. And you can use that list on the test. So you just have to learn how to recognize what's what. And over time, it comes into your head and gets more remembered and all that. So in my class, you don't need to memorize it that way. I think you will memorize it automatically. So we start with the skull. This is the skull here. This is little bit of a bigger section, the skull. Right here, these are the terms for the skull. And then these are the terms for the facial muscles. See, there's the muscle section. And then next week, we're going to go through these bones in here on the bony section. And then we go through the muscles. So this is a time when we want to process the material a little different than what we did in the first few weeks. And one of the ways that we do that so this test review stuff. So you go back to that, right? And you look at that and you print out the stuff or download it and And you know that the term list is all the terms I want you. Because one of the problems that people get into issues here is when the teacher says, well, everything in the book goes. I'm like, yeah, but that's extremely scary. And so we don't want to do that. So anything that I want you to know is on that list. And even if I say it every time, every session, you're probably going to go like, dude, you already said that many times. I still have students who end up not doing that, and they go crazy because it's difficult when you don't have a finite amount of terms. Because there's a lot of damn terms. These, there's people that are bored in the world. They got to create these anatomy things. No, wait, that was not nice. So anyway, but pay attention to those things from the start, because as we process this material, of course, we'll go through regular videos that you already learned, and then we have the bullet points below it. The videos are in two formats. We have the bullet points. Hey, does anybody like the transcripts that is on this call, please? Can you speak up if you like them? Because I have not made them all, and they're really hard to make. And if they're not used, I'm not going to make them. But if they are, please speak up or text me up or something like that if you listen to the video. So anyway, as we have the videos here, up here, two sections again. You need either the lecture or either the one where I talk into the computer. They call that the voice over PowerPoint. And then I have the other one where I go into the classroom and I just lecture before COVID. And it's a bit more lively. Depends on, you don't have to watch both, but some people go back and forth. Some like one better than the other. I just want to put everything up that I have so you can sort of choose that way a little bit. And then I have the bullet points, and in the bullet points, we just go into all the bones and have all these labels and things like that. And I talk about them in the video, and I describe them a little bit more in all these sections. Yeah, see here, temporal bone is a bone, and then all the parts to it, etc. And so after that, you watch that, you then have a regular good old quizzy stuff thing, the questions, as you already know them. And then now what we do have is we have labeling and coloring exercises. And so these are two things. They're label and coloring. And so you get a list of terms, which is basically the section of the term list of the skull term. So I just put them here again. And so you see this is the bone. And then under the bone, you have a couple of little landmarks that indicate part of that bone that stick out, that maybe have an eyebrow attached to it, like superciliary arches is where the eyebrows are. Glabella is in between the eyebrows, and it means hairless. And so this term is always on the test. Because if you have not done this term right on the test, I'm wondering how many videos you watched. Because I say it every time over and over and over. Because this term, glabella, rhymes with my daughter's name, Isabella. And so that's why it's always on the test. And she's now 21, and she was 5 when I started this kind of test. So it's been every time. So you better memorize that right now and put it on a flashcard. That gives you 1 point. Ta-chung! Already. So what you do with these terms in this exercise, you either go to this picture, you can print it out, you have it in your booklets too. You can also then watch these videos as I'm going through these different terms on the list. Some of them are a little bit more extensive and maybe one term or so missing, but generally it's pretty much the same and it's there. But as you can see, some of these videos are getting a little old. And then you label all the terms on that list and you color the area. So for example, when it says frontal bone, you say, make a line here, or in, you can write it in. I actually think it's better to write it right in. Personally, it's more direct. And then you color the frontal bone area with some kind of a color, whatever you want. And you can do this right here. That's why I actually have it here. You can annotate it directly here. Look, you can, I don't even know how it works actually, because so you can take this and say like, hey, that's like, I'm gonna color that with my iPad pencil. It's probably a little easier if I do it. And then I gotta also somehow label it. And you can do something like that. You can point it, and then it says blah, 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 blah. And you label it that way. And you can annotate it, and then you upload your annotation. You can say submit. See, and then you say submit. If you do it on the paper that you have in your booklet materials, you actually have videos here, and then you also have a term list. You have videos here that go to these videos that explain everything. Which term is what. So you could do it in a cafe, in a park. You don't have to do it on a computer if you don't want to. The other thing that I think is awesome in this section is you do things that help you in the process of memorizing it. So since you kind of need to know where all these terms are, it's sort of the part of the memorization process without the anxiety of having then doing it really in the test, right? So everything is sort of in those steps. What I would do personally, I will probably make flashcards out of those because that helps me draw it or trace it or something it, then label it on the other side, and then I already have a study tool. And what I'm okay with is you upload those as you work, as your homework. You don't have to do it on the paper that I provide. I had some guy last semester. He was actually from Mexico City. He came in through Zoom from there, and he made videos. His English was not so good and it was hard, but he was really techy and he really liked to do that, and that's how he processed the material. And I probably have him somewhere. He made videos of all the terms that we did in this section, and totally loved that. So however you know of yourself, of how your brain figures this stuff out, play with it. Or if you don't know yet, play with it. Do different versions and figure out what works best. Because ultimately, this should be to some level a bit of a joyous experience. And actually, a lot of students do like this color labeling thing and say, oh, this is kind of a cathartic process. Once we get over the fact that it's like, what is this? We're coloring? Is this like in kindergarten? But the reason why I'm feeling very confident in putting this stuff in is because even Marion Diamond, who used to have Einstein's brain and wrote a big book, coloring book on the brain in its detail, and is a UC Berkeley professor who's focusing on brain science, one of the best brain researchers over time. It's a coloring book that she has the students do to memorize and go through the things, slow it down, not be too fast in reading it, and not even reading it, just glancing over it, because a lot of the thing in anatomy is just terms and slowing it down and not reading over it. That's why I don't like the books with too much text, because it's sort of, for me, it doesn't work together. It's a visual medium. And for my job as a teacher, in some ways, it's giving you things to get into that space that you can be relaxed enough that you can absorb some of that. And, oh, look at that. I'm even wrong here. I have to fix this. Anyway, so that's how you can do this stuff here. Any questions to this type of exercise? Please? Nobody? Is it like not clear at all, or are you guys getting this?
No, it's clear.
Okay, then we're cool. Because it's actually not much more. It's basically get some color pencils or whatever you do, however you do these things. If you use highlighters, I'm cool. Or again, if you do flashcards, that's cool. Tracing, that's cool. I'm really interested in you slowing it down a bit and getting through those terms with this level of what we're doing now. So this is like more experiential. And then, let's see, this week we don't. We finished this week with questions and tips. Of course, you guys getting used to these things, right? I assume. And then what we're going to do in this section of muscles and bones, we're going to do a couple of health kit things. Oh, somebody texted me about the health kit thing. So this is sort of the last week, or has been, depending on when you started. We didn't do this many texts this time around, but that's all right. You guys keep track of your work and your days. And then next week, in week 5, but you can upload it now if you already have it, because it's a little spread out, because not everybody has the same 3 weeks. In there, we're going to upload the scorecard. I just tell them basically to have you take a picture. Do the reassess the things after you did the routine. So go back to the first exercise, those 7 things, like what's my posture and so forth. So see if there is any, change in that. See how, if that made any sense. And then I want you basically take a picture of the scorecard. You can, of course, also make other formats, audio, video, drawing for the whole thing if you want. But that way we finish that part of the process up. And then after that, we have a little discussion. We always have those with the health kits. where we have a little discussion about it. Hey, how was this for you? How was this for me? You know, was this boring? This brought me something. Just a little back and forth to finish it up in that situation. So I want you to have a little final reflection on it. Spend some time on this. You know, these things are actually really what makes, you know, the difference at the end of the day. And then the next thing, so what we do now in this section, we have 3 health kit activities. We have an ergonomic evaluation. This next week, not this week, but I want to just mention them to start the process. I want you to evaluate your workstation a little bit. So the ergonomic evaluation goes through a whole bunch of explanation. I have a video on it. It goes through a bit of biomechanics. It goes through a little bit of tips for good sitting. They actually asked me at Merritt to do this for the faculty when COVID happened. So I just did some pamphlet thing, and then I figured I integrated in the class because it is very helpful, and a lot of us have, you know, would be good to think about some of these things before we're 50-ish, and it's like, oh man, why my shoulder hurting right now? Oh, because I always moused with my shoulder lifted up, and I never paid any attention to it because it never was a problem. And so that's one reason why I have that activity in there. Students usually like that. The one that there's a little bit more friction or challenge is the posture evaluation. I also want you to evaluate your posture a little bit. So I'm going to go, because we're doing bones, right? Look at that. I had hair, not that much. And I want you to take a picture of yourself somehow with a phone, put it on the wall or somehow, somebody, and then evaluate a few parts of your posture. So you go through some of these steps. There's also a video. And I want you to sort of get a little bit more aware of your posture in as we talk about the bones. So that's the second one. And then the third one is a 2-weeker. These are weekly ones. And then the last one, we start in week 7. And these are also, you know, some of those, if you come to lab, we can do it in lab. I was starting thinking some of those we can also do in lab together. So since, you know, so food for thought. If you think that's a good idea, let's talk about it. Because I'm not unhappy doing this every semester. Because then the last one is an injury prevention evaluation. So now we're going to more talk about muscles. So I figured I'd bring that in there. And that one is actually from the orthopedic world for, what are they called? Functional capacity evaluations, something like that, with low, you know, you don't need material, but you have a very high success rate with correlation of what it does to help the patient not get injuries and so forth. Because what it does, it works through, I work through a few tests that address things that often go awry in our life as we get older and not our athletic the same and in our 30s and 40s, and we want to keep maintaining what we have. I know now a lot of you are 20, but you know, if you know about it now, you could put it aside, but you pick it up at some point because you go like, oh, now I remember something. And so we go through a testing sequence versus balancing test. And every test, that's more for older people, but believe me, a lot of youngsters who don't do outside stuff these days have a challenge with that. And that's a difficulty because we can have twisted ankles. Once we have twisted ankles a lot, the other things are not work. It's harder to be ambulatory and outside and do stuff. And so it works, you know, it is important to know a few things about our body. Well, since this is anatomy, I have the right to just, you know, it's part of how I teach this stuff. So a little experiential. And so what you have there, see, then you have normative data. And you know, if you're between 20 and 60-ish, so 59-ish, so that's most of us, I think, most of the time, you want to be able to stand on one leg, how long on one leg with the eyes open and with the eyes closed. And then look at this, it goes dramatically down what normative data is as we get older. And guess what? As we get really older, falling is one of the major causes why people go to the hospital. And guess then what happens after that? So we want to keep that maintained. So we're starting now as very young. What we build up as very young, we keep in longer as we get older. Maybe you look at it that way. It really works that way with the bones and osteoporosis. if you are in your teens and you have a fast food diet and flush all the calcium out and don't put it into your body, when you get older, you don't have it in the body when you need it. It's a reservoir. And so a lot of these things work that way. It's like you build up as much as you have when you can, and then you have more reservoir as you get older. So that's a boring one. But then we have, look at that, repetitive squat tests. I want you to squat down, and I want you to do real squats, not just like halfway down squats. How many should you do? Look at this. That's some serious amount of squatting you should be able to do. And so we'll see. I think a lot of us are a little bit harder with that. But if we don't have strong lower leg muscles or leg muscles against gravity, we're more prone to injuries. And so I have you go through some of these tests. We do 2 weeks on that. So it's a little exertive. And of course, if something hurts, you talk to me. You don't do it. I say that over and over in here, I think, as well. And then, we can figure that out. But if you have a shoulder problem, you're obviously not going to be doing the shoulder one. So be very aware of that. Don't, we talk about it. So reach out. I do want to talk to you if you have an issue. Not that I need to help you, but I just want to understand why you can't do one of the tests. And hopefully at the end you find a couple of things. Some of these things are flexion questions. Are you having enough flexion? Look at the hip flexors, for example. Guess what? Look, if it looks like that and you don't have this muscle in here can elongate, this is a problem. You should be looking like that. And so these are things that can affect all of us. And a lot of the helps that we can do is not that bad. We're just doing some stretching, for example. In it. So that's what I put together. I learned this in my chiropractic clinic, and then they're doing it on the Swiss Olympic team as well. I learned these tests, and so like, oh boy, this is probably fairly important. So I tried to make it so it doesn't have to come from a doctor to a patient, but it can be implemented by yourself, because it's really not that hard unless you go, you injure yourself. But most of these are not injury-prone things, and so if you know to just stop it when it hurts and talk to me, we should be fine. All right, so that's that. And look at that. I need to go through this. Some of the pictures didn't come through. But that's that. And I think that closes out this sort of section that gets us almost through October. So that's a long section that we have now. You guys have any questions for what I've just mentioned here? Clear as mud? All right. Does that sound like, hey, that's kind of exciting? Or you're like, oh my God, what is he doing with us?
Exciting, but like knowing the terms, it's kind of scary because it's like my first time taking all these classes.
Okay, yeah, that's that's the learning the terminology in this kind of thing is really, that's why I like flashcards, because it's like, actually what's very funny in my in-class, when we did it in the classroom about, I don't know, multiple years ago now, one of the students says, hey, can we because I let him use the term list in the test as well. And then could we write on that? And I'm like, oh no, I'm not gonna make you do a cheat sheet. What's wrong with you? And then I was thinking about it. I'm like, wait a minute. If you actually make a cheat sheet and you don't use it, that's the best form of study, because you narrow it all down to that long term and that one sort of thing, a format. And so I allowed him to do it. So every test in the classroom, they were able to do a cheat sheet front and back. And that's, the term list, they're on the list, and then in the background as well. And so that because it helps you, and then in another class, you can't use it, but at least you know the process. And, and then I can really tell if you flunked the test, come on. But, look at it from a perspective of, it's really these terms on that list that you want to associate with a part of the body. And then you want to know things around it, and that helps you understand why that term is there. Like if it's in the skull, we have the big hole in the middle. Well, why is there a hole? That's where the why question is really important, right? Why would there be a hole? Well, you got to have a brain go down to the spinal cord so we can talk to the body. That's why there is a big hole. And so the brain actually goes through the hole, and then the spinal cord comes underneath. And so then you start understanding, and then what is it called? It's called foramen magnum. And then you learn, foramen, you learn at one time, you say, oh, that's a word for hole. So one of the things I would do, I would go and Google. You don't understand the word foramen, don't wait for me to explain it. I'll probably explain it in the lecture. But go to Google and say like, hey, foramen, what does that mean? Hey Siri, some orders, or whoever it is. And then, oh, look at my Siri is talking to me now. And but then it will tell you, oh, foramen means a hole, and you can associate it and learn it and understand it over time that way. And so it's really about taking the term, I think, taking the term, slowing it down, trying to understand the term in your language, in your words, in your picture, use the pictures, and then from there you automatically, I think, if you spend some time with that term on the paper and draw it and do things with it, or me making the booklets originally, right? That's also how I studied this stuff, honestly. Partly why I started studying anatomy is like, holy cow, how would I ever remember this on patients? And so I started teaching it. I mean, also, had a family, and I needed multiple sources of income. But that was one, because my mentor did 200 cadaver dissection, spinal, wrote an atlas over it, a very good atlas with pictures and then X-rays and MRIs. And I said, like, hey, I got to be able to dissect some. I got to be going to a college to teach, because it just deepens my studies as well. But I can pass those on to you as well as I can. The other thing that really works is mnemonics. The silliest mnemonic. So when we come, for example, to the muscle, the hip flexor muscle, the one that raises your thigh up in the front, that one of the main muscles called the psoas. And when it is injured or has a problem, it gives you pain in the low back. And so I call it, it's like the psoas gives you a sore ass. And people just, they always remember it. And I mean, I hope I can say that word, but so far it's been good. And so you want to have these sort of silly connections too that make when they do, there's memory palaces. I know I'm going over a little bit. Have you heard of that? Memory palaces? So there's memorization techniques, because these people, they train themselves to memorize order of a deck of cards, like within a minute, and then it can recite the whole order of the whatever 30, 50 cards there are. It's like, how the hell do you do that? And so they do that with, they call them memory palaces. So they say most people remember a home that they grew up in. So you go through that home, room to room, and have things that you memorize that when you go to that room. Oh, there's the piano. Or, oh, there's the clothes hanging thing. Oh, there's the fridge in the kitchen. And then you have steps that you can attach something new to. And that's how you put things into the brain. And so we can use that and say, okay, maybe we don't have a memory palace, although that's really smart. Google a memory palace. It's a really smart methodology. But we can also learn that if we do different things with the terms, like draw while we're thinking of the term, or to a flashcard, stand in the grocery line and have chitty chatty going on, music, and to do a flashcard and visualize it, have a different input while we visualize it. That strengthens the connection with the brain to memorize all these terms as well.
Thank you. Yeah, and I think the other thing is like pronunciation too, because it's like especially for me, like as an English second language, it's really difficult to pronounce certain things. And
and that's very important too. Speak them out. And you know what? Most of these terms are Latin to begin with. So I have a feeling the English pronunciation is a bit off to start with. So, and also the terms are the same in Chinese. So we all pronounce them different. So this is one place where you actually can sort of not worry about that as much as you can, right? Yeah. So, just listen to some YouTube in your language, and anatomy YouTube, and see how they're saying it. Be proud of your heritage. Say it in your language. We can take that. We're multicultural over here. It's very important. No, it's very important. All right. What else? Does that help? And you can always reach out. I'm a text away.
Thank you.
And if I don't text you back, I might have a blackout in my brain. So just text me again. It happens, it's like a little much. No, sometimes I have a day I just can't open a text. Brain's MIA. Missing in action. So just bug me again. I don't want you to take it personally if I don't get back to you, because it's my affliction, my pathology, but I also don't want you to worry to bug me multiple times if you need me. I'm here for you guys. Okay. Because it's very, very important. And that's what I'm saying. It's very important in this process that you don't give in to your anxiety if there is anxiety about this study stuff. You know, if your anxiety overcomes you, go take some 5 deep breaths and do a minute. I don't know, go walk around for a little bit and come back and talk yourself down. There was a very interesting podcast I listened to was about, I think it was about breakup somehow. And the brain, how the brain goes to relationship breakups, how it's like getting off a Coke or some weird thing. And the guy said in that process, he said, it's like the brain is a child. And so it's really in every process. And you have to be the brain's master. Right. So ultimately, and that's actually because I want to do this, I want to do that, I want to do this now in the brain. That's the child, right? It's like, because if you're like, let's say you have a breakup and then you're like fixated and you go like, oh, I saw a photo on Instagram. I got to go and see what this person's doing now, blah, 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 blah. And you go nuts. And he says, no. Then you got to take your things. You're like, let's go watch a movie and don't worry about it. Think about something completely different. And so, you know, when you feel your anxiety come up, when I feel my anxiety come, I have a lot with patients because I'm like, I have new patients. I'm like, what am I going to do? They think I'm going to help them. I'm like, I don't know. I got to first see them. And, you know, so the expectations and then mine and hopefully works out. And so I have to talk myself down and say, no. I've done this many times. I know. And I've been doing this since 2001 and it still bugs me. So, you know, you're not alone. All right, you guys. Anyway, if anything else to speak up, otherwise we can go our merry way. And again, no, I'm just a text away. I'm right here. All right. I won't go to work tomorrow. My hand is messed up. You better talk to me. I need some talking to. All right. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Professor.
Bye.
All right.